You made a statement at our senior leader prayer advance when we talked a little bit about this, about something that God spoke to you in the middle of this when you were hopeless or frustrated.
And
Can you maybe share that statement and the story, circumstances around that?
So it wasn't even so much this, it was more Ashley, but it definitely pertains to this. I probably have grown in wisdom, so now I've gotten it.
That's fine because they're all connected.
Yeah,
it's personal stuff.
That sometimes you hear the Lord the loudest in the valley. Is that what you're talking about, or the wrestling?
Yeah, no.
And then that might not have been what it was, but I do feel like that.
Well,
like
I was thinking about your statement about when the Lord told you it's okay to wrestle with me,
but not fight.
Right.
Right.
Because the two, I mean, it all goes together. That's what I was thinking about, because even though it's more connected with Ashley, and for those of you who don't know, and we could talk about that, is, just several years ago, our daughter and son-in-law were pregnant with identical twin girls. Everything was fine until week 22. They go on for their ultrasound, find out that both of the girls have a disease called TTTS, twin to twin.
TTTS, twin to twin transfusion syndrome.
That threatened their life and their viability. They were both delivered at 24 weeks, 5 or 6 days. And after 10 days, Reese, our granddaughter, passed away. And today Celia is a miracle. She's doing amazing. But again, behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, remember watching Owen when she had gone for that ultrasound and her driving in. I mean, just those things that are just seared in your mind of her just bawling. And I'm like, what's going on? You're in the car, Zach took you home, you drove separate, you're coming back together. What's going on? And then going to the hotel and then finding out that they can't have surgery, and just both of us just crying like, are they gonna die? Are we?
That was one of the hardest days. And whereas your battle with dystonia was a longer, slower, it was a marathon, this felt really intense.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was in that season.
And I think too, it's like when it's you can do it, but it was like, this is my daughter.
Right.
Well, I would have ran out 131 if I could have, to take away all the pain that she was going through. So
I've never prayed so hard in my life.
Either. So
for a miracle. And we did get a miracle, but we lost a little miracle too. That we'll see again.
Yep.
But it was in that period of time, I think, when you were really wrestling with the Lord. And maybe some of it's compounded from your own personal battles. And then it's like, Lord, I just went through all these years of doing this behind the scenes, fighting this. Feels like there's a little let off of that. And then this happens.
Yeah.
And it's then that you made that statement, or that God spoke to you.
He said, you can wrestle with me, Jane, but don't fight me. And I felt like he was saying, the wrestling is fine because it's a partnership. You're doing it with me. But fighting is an individual, injuries involved in that. And so wrestle with me. And I was like, Lord, I'll have a limp. I don't even care. I just want to know that you're with me, that you're close. Like, I'm willing to do that. But I think if I had fought him, that I would have probably walked away. I was just...
Fighting's adversarial. Yeah. It's like, I hate you, and I want to injure you, I want to end you, as opposed to...
Wrestling of just...
Jacob's story of, Lord, I'm not letting you go until you bless me.
Right, exactly.
And I think that's a perfect picture, not just of that one particular instance or season or story, but it's kind of indicative of what every leader has to do behind the scenes when you're dealing with personal pain. Because the reality is, your story's a great example of that, but we could probably have 10 things.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of my dad early on,
Dad dying of cancer.
Yeah.
My dad dying.
Yeah.
Of going through church splits, of staff people leaving, or of lies being spread about us, our kids going through their own seasons of, we'll use the word exploration. When you're in ministry and you're out front, there is pressure on you to have everything together, to always be positive, to be faith-filled, because your role is you can't get up in the pulpit or in leadership and process your pain with people.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you don't have pain. So you have to deal with it behind the veil,
Right.
so to speak. And, even disappointment with God. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we've both experienced over the years is how do you put a smile on your face and lead others when in your own heart, I mean, if you're being honest, it's like, I thought you were better than this, God.
Yeah.
And this is not going the way that I wanted. Did you say that you experienced similar type of things throughout your journey of just being disappointed?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Literally going to counseling, I think, was the thing that was able to get me on the right track and refocused of because I was so angry. So,
So let's talk about that. So we talked about your story a little bit, but it's our story. It's you're the one telling it first person, but I was right there with you, and we're one in this. My vantage point, I'm looking at it from one angle, and you're looking at it from a different angle. But let's talk about the things. What do you do, or what have you done, that you felt like was effective, and maybe the things that you felt like weren't effective, in dealing with disappointment in God and personal pain? What are the things? Because you very easily could have gone, you could have walked away from the faith, you could have become bitter, you could have become angry. What are the things that you feel like you've done well throughout the years to help you deal with your pain behind closed doors so that you could keep a pure heart publicly?
Yeah. And not even publicly, but also personally.
There you go.
Because it doesn't
It's
matter
not
what I
fake.
do
It's
in
not
public.
fake, right.
Exactly. And I'm totally not fake. I don't like that.
That is not who you are.
I think it really was a wrestling. Worship, like knowing in my core that God was good. Even if I wanted to accuse him and be so angry, it was like I knew just from what he had done in my life up until and through all that he was good. So it's hard. It's kind of like with your spouse. You can be so angry at them, but you know they're good, so you can't stay angry. So it was like allowing myself to be angry, journal. Did a lot of journaling. Actually, when we moved this last time, I think I threw them all away because I was like, I don't want to die and have my family see these journals, because I literally was very just honest with the Lord. Like, this is how I'm feeling.
Right.
Like, no holds bar back on it. And I feel like that was really powerful because God knows anyway. So it's like, I can be like, oh God, you're so whatever. I can be like, I'm ticked off and blah, blah, blah. And so that worship, good friends.
Talk about worship, what that means to you. I mean, because I think that's a big part of who you are, always has been. And when I look back on that, that was the thing that, as your husband, I would always gauge, because I'm a problem solver. That's just by nature who I am. And it was like, you're the old Sound of Music. How do you solve a problem like Maria? I'm like, I think every husband sometimes is like, how do I solve this problem of Jane? How do I help her? And then there's just nothing I can do. I mean, so I would gauge, I don't know if I've ever told you, but I would gauge how you were doing by your worship. Like I would like pay attention on a Sunday morning. Are you worshiping? When I'd come home, is there music playing? How do you respond when worship music's on in the car? Because to me, I knew how important that was to you, and I could gauge your, or I could evaluate your position in the Lord or your mood towards the Lord based on that. Talk about worship, how practically that was in your life, why it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I think for me, worship was, I grew up in church, but was not a Christian, and didn't live like a Christian at all. Met you, and I was like, wow, he's different, and you brought me to church. And it was in worship at that church that I experienced the Lord, that I was like, he's real. Like up until then, didn't care. You know what I mean? Had no
Right.
idea, no relationship, no nothing with him at all. And but knew who he was from church. But in that, it was just, I think I cried. I think I was just overwhelmed, like, he's real. I just remember that, like, he's real. And so I think for me, that's just been my connecting point with the Lord. Like the kids will always say, and growing up, we always had worship music going on in the house and all that kind of stuff. And so I think for me, that was like my true north. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like everything else can be going to crap around me, but I can recenter myself with worship, and a
Right.
song can come on and tears come to my eyes or whatever.
Yep.
So yeah,
So journaling,
journaling, worship,
worship, you were about to say friends. Talk about that.
friends, good friends.
Talk about that, the importance of that, because I think that was a key for us. I think even both of us,
Yeah.
going through all those years, to have some
Yeah.
friendship. What did that mean to you?
Oh, so much. I mean, just to have just a few girlfriends that just sharpened each other and really didn't look at me even as a pastor's wife, and didn't look at me as somebody with dystonia.
Right.
It was like we were moms, we had kids the same age, we had fun together, we, did life. I'm thinking of like Anne and Jenny. Like
Yeah.
those were my go-to. Our kids had so much fun, and it was never a thing of like, they're looking at me like, what's wrong with you? Because you go to other places and it'd be like, what's wrong? Why is your head pulling?
But you could be yourself
yes,
with them.
exactly. And so, and for our kids, I mean, it just was such a fun time. It went so fast.
I used to call you the magic school bus because we had that white Pontiac transport van that was the ugliest van that looked like the space shuttle without wings. But you would load that car up, it looked like a school bus, and take them all over the place.
Yep.
You were a great mom.
Yeah. So fun.
In the middle of all that, you were a phenomenal mom. And what's funny is I don't think our kids knew anything was going on.
They might. I mean, they were a few, but I was their mom, so they didn't know any different. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like they're like, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you?" But
I think as they got older, we talked about it.
and they were with me at different like when we had to get passports for Australia.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Like yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm their mom, so it'd be like if I didn't have a finger, they'd.
So journaling, worship, friends. Talk about the part that counseling or therapy helped with.
Yeah, I think that just to be able to go, and it's so funny because I think in the early 2000s, counseling, you couldn't be a Christian and go to counseling. It's kind of the vibe we're under. So went to Grand Rapids for that.
Right.
Snuck
An
up to
hour
GR to get counseling, and then got counseling down here too, with a good friend now. She's moved out of state, but was an amazing counselor. And then just most recent, going to counseling, and I feel like it just recenters. And if you have a good godly counselor, they can speak life back into you, and you're able to just kind of like the journaling, just be like, this is what I'm going through,
Right.
I think the counselors in the early part of the years were even more just for things in the past that were painful things that I had to get over.
Right.
And then the most recent was like healed of those things, like childhood traumas, blah, 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 to more like where I am now, like, dystonia pain, church pain, purpose, Ashley,
Husband pain.
all those kind of things, and just to be able to be real, and then also get that godly
Yeah.
counseling back in, and so helpful.
Yeah, I think there's such a stigma
Yeah,
attached.
I don't know so much now.
Maybe it's. I think it's better, and maybe it's the circles we're not in and the circles we're in.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, well, for me, my dad was a counselor, so I probably have counselor trauma.
Yeah.
From having a dad who was doing therapy on you in the car, so you're a little bit defensive. But I think in some circles in the church among leaders and pastors, and maybe just in general, there's a stigma that if you're a leader, you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you plow through it, you confess the right things, if you read your Bible enough, you're not going to be you're going to be better. If you pray hard enough, you're going to be better. And if you go to counseling, it's because you're weak.
Right.
And I know that was my kind of mentality. I would have never said that. And I went through a little dark season that you remember myself, where I ended up going to a counselor, and it was helpful. But when I first went, in my mind, I'm like, this is dumb. I don't need this. He's not going to tell me anything I don't already know. I felt like it was a sign of weakness. I'll never forget when we were sitting with that therapist, and he was talking to me about therapy, and even at that time using antidepressant medication, because I was on that for 9 months. And I'm like, I'm afraid that it's going to change my personality. And he said, well, do you like your personality right now? And I said, well, that's a good point.
And I remember him saying, are you depressed? And you had your back to me, but he was looking at me, and you're like, no. And I'm like, yes, he is.
He is.
Like, he needs help.
Yeah, I went through depression, but I mean, in your situation and for any leader, if there's a stigma attached to that, like I'm admitting defeat, or I'm saying that I'm broken beyond repair, or that I'm so weak I can't just fix myself. So many people are carrying a burden that they need somebody to help them process that. And from a biblical lens, to always point you back to Christ, but to actually pray with you, to help you experience healing, or even like you said, just to get your true north back.
Right.
Just in talking and getting it out, because I think sometimes in counseling and therapy, you're actually, as you're talking, you're actually hearing what's really coming out of your heart in an honest way that you don't when you're just doing everyday life. If you could go back, this is final question I want to ask you about this. If you could go back to 1994, 95, when you're just beginning to experience some of the symptoms of things, and let's just maybe say the first 5 to 10 years of that, because that was really intense. And you could have a conversation with your younger self. What would you encourage 20-something-year-old Jane to do differently in that period of time, knowing what you know now?
I think I would, part of me's like, would I do anything different? I think I would be like, it's not what people think. Don't let it affect you as much as you did. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? Like, just go back and answer them honestly. Yeah, I don't even know what this is, or, you know what I mean? Instead of trying to hide or cover, like, the shame of it, I think I would be like, don't
let people have that much control.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
Because it affected so much. Like, even ministry for you, I just would beg you at times, like, do we have to do ministry? Can we do anything but? And so to really enjoy that and not let that shame of that rule me so much, because it did so much. And so even in that, of healing from that, because I'm sure I mean, just so many
Right. It's
vows of like, I'm like, blah, 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 I'm not going to do this, that, and the other. And having to unwind and heal from all that. So,
Right.
yeah.
well, I would say to you that I'm proud of you. You're courageous. You've been an amazing wife and friend and partner. I wish people knew you like I knew you. They don't get the benefit of that though. And then I'm jealous of that, so I'm glad I do. But I hope, and I know, like your story as you shared it in different places helped so many people. And I know that there's people listening right now that maybe they don't have cervical dystonia, but they have maybe depression, they feel alone, maybe their marriage isn't strong, or maybe it's really fragile, that maybe they have a chronic illness or something that, pain, whether it's emotional or physical pain that they're carrying. We just want you to know you are not alone. The Lord is with you. There is hope. And I really believe that your story and our story together is going to encourage people. Thanks for coming on to the podcast and sharing with everybody your story. You're awesome.
I love you.
Love you too, babe.